Welcome to this week's Real Talk Food Safety with Jill and Tia. And as you can see, our special guest, Stephanie.
Hello, everyone.
Hi,
Welcome.
everyone.
Stephanie, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you. It's been a long time that I've been here last. I think about a year, right? And it's,
Mhm.
as always, a pleasure talking to you ladies.
Well,
Yes.
and I bet you bring the holiday cheer with you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought someone's going to do it. So, yeah, I volunteered.
there we go. We were just talking about before we got on that this transition between like Thanksgiving and like when Thanksgiving's over, it's immediate Christmas,
Yeah.
especially in the States, right?
Yeah. But that's a virtual background. That's not my living room.
All right. Is anybody else out there feeling the holiday cheer? Like, drop in the comments. Let us know if you are like the thumbs up or like sideways or no
Yeah.
on a holiday cheer. Let's see, it's November 29th.
Well, I'm
And
in
right, any holiday cheer. Like we're good with all holidays. So
absolutely. Well, I'm definitely in the holiday spirit, in the holiday cheer
Yeah,
around
so
here. Trying to stay, I just love the holidays. I just love the holidays. I think people are nicer. We're all looking for that cheer. We're all trying to wind down for the end of the year. It's like this almost like winding down, reconnecting with ourselves before we get busy again in January.
yeah, it's this little moment of peace or weeks of peace that we're all looking for in this really wild and turmoil times. So it's just great for everyone to
Mhm.
settle down, relax, and get back together with friends and families as well, right? And enjoy food, which kind of brings us to the topic.
Yeah.
true.
Food,
It
right?
is food, but I do know not everybody like enjoys this time as much. I was just talking with someone who their BRC audit is like the second week of January.
Yeah.
And so even though it's right audit ready every day, we all know that there's still some amount. There's still, I don't know. I'd love to know, does anybody out there do no prep? Because everywhere I've been, like there's some prep for an audit, right? So
Oh, yeah.
even already, this person is thinking about like, okay, what are the things that have to be done, and like even between those areas, right? Because people are out for a while and then back, and just a tough time for like audits.
Yeah, yeah. And just the toll it takes during the audit too, right? Like if you have less
Energy.
people in, it's just more on your plate, more on the people's plate that's there. So
Yes.
yeah, that's not fun. That's
No.
Yeah. And things that needed to be audited are getting more and more, right? The list is getting longer and longer. So it's yeah, a lot of work for the companies as well as for the auditors.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And as part of that, right, they always want to do like a mock trace event, or they want to know about your recall plan.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty slick intro to our topic today, right?
Oh, I'm impressed.
It's a good segue.
It is. A relevant topic for the holidays.
It
Yeah.
is. And actually, part of our topic is really kind of embedded in there because, right, what we have, if you read the description, it was about how our recall readiness reflects our essentially our leadership commitment
Mm-hmm.
and like how proactive we are.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
Like, how do those things tie together and what does that look like? So, as we think about getting ready for an audit and like, oh my gosh, we have to run a trace event or we have to do a mock recall, like some of that, like the more our leadership, okay, here's Jill's thought. The more our leadership is involved with being proactive and actually committed
Mm-hmm.
to supporting food safety, and I know that looks different for everybody, but that makes recalls and trace exercises so much easier.
Mm-hmm. It
And I
does.
think of it in terms of the things like where you have it scheduled and people are like, oh, we can't do it that day.
Oh
Oh, I'm
yeah.
so busy that week. Or, oh, I can't be there. I have another important meeting. Like, how
Yeah,
ready are we then?
that's
Mhm.
true. And the best tools aren't good enough if you don't get the support of your management, right? I mean,
Mm.
you can have all the technique and all the tools and everything. but yeah, you need to have the support to be able to practice, and then also after having practiced, just take a look at it and reflect, and check what could have been done better, what went well, where are the hurdles, where are the challenges that we're still facing. Yeah, just do a checkup afterwards as well. That's so important, and you cannot do that without the support of your leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. We always talk about, when people start thinking about like technology to help, right, to lessen the load, to make your processes faster, to make it more complete, that people, right, and process are still a part of that people, process, technology, kind of triangle, right, or three-legged chair situation. So if you don't have your people and you're not empowering them and giving them the right tools, right, to be able to lead in the technology space, then you struggle, right? And we see organizations and people struggle.
That's true. But also, if you do, like you said, Jill, if you do a mock recall, it's often done, as I would say, not in the correct way. They often, companies look for the data, they gather data, they're using CRM and ERP systems, and then they go like, yeah, I know where I get the data. I know what happened. Okay, and then they stop. But I mean, let's be honest, that's not what a recall simulation should look like, because you don't only need to practice how to get your data. I mean, that's often the easiest part. I mean, if you have API connectivity, you just connect to all your systems and you can download all the data that you need. But practicing the rest of the recall, that's where the work really starts and where the real thing happens. So you have to also simulate your communication, and then also the feedback you're getting from the people you are involving in that simulation practice. And that is so much more than just like a regular mock recall, because then you can train and learn how to use the data that you'll receive from the responders, and what to do with that. And that is also part of a recall, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Which is why we're here today, because right, we know the reality is it's not if we're going to have a recall, it's when we have a recall.
Yes.
And so let's talk about kind of what that looks like.
Yeah.
But we know there's probably people in the audience who it might be your first time joining us. You tuned in because Stephanie was going to be here. We were going to be talking about recalls and leadership. And so if you're not familiar with Catalyst, we are here to transform how people lead in food. And we talk about that because really, to be technical expert, really we come in and oftentimes we're technical experts, which is exactly what we need when we talk about food safety, identifying hazards and understanding risk. But for us to effectively lead our teams and effectively empower people and to be able to influence, we need different skill sets for that. That requires different competencies. And that's what we do here at Catalyst, is really look at how do we infuse these human skills that we know are critical for our technical experts. How do we do that? And how do we do it effectively? And we know, because T and I have been there. We have walked those shoes.
Yeah.
We just happen to be professional coaches who really dive into like the heart and the soul of how we operate and how we connect with people to really help everyone thrive.
And all that just screams food safety culture, right? And the work that we're doing around how do we empower the people that we have? How do we engage them? How do we make sure that what they're doing, that their beliefs and values are incorporated into the way that they do work every day? That's how we move that dial on culture, on any culture, right? Food safety is just really the technical piece of it that we're focused on within the industry. But it's really culture and people and taking care of people so that they can lead better, right? And be better leaders in the organization.
And sometimes it takes so little to accomplish so much. It's incredible. And then people, if they were just thinking about it, it would help tremendously within a company. But often it's the thought process that's not working properly. If I would say so.
It is. It's a lot of mindset. It's where we're coming from, how we're thinking about things, the stories we're creating. And if we don't create space to understand what those are and reflect on them, then we're losing out. And the people around us lose out as well.
Right.
So,
Exactly. Exactly.
yes.
So we're happy you're here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Yes. So let's jump in, Stephanie. For people that do not know you and the work that you do, share a little bit about yourself and what led you to food safety, the food industry, and ultimately your work that you do around recalls.
Sure. So my name is Stephanie Weinand, and I'm the general manager of Recall Infolink GmbH, located in Germany. The mother company is located in Boise, Idaho, in the US. And that's where the whole story about recalls really started. I think almost, well, what is it now? Almost 16 years ago. And so we're now a global company. And the reason for that is food travels, and food safety needs to be a global approach to protect consumers, protect brands. It's not just a country thing, or a continent thing. In our case, it's a global challenge that we are all facing. It's a global supply chain that we're all dealing with. And the reason that got me into this business, it's just like, I think I love food. I love safe food, and I have a huge family. I love to protect my kids, my family, just like you. And it's such an interesting and important topic, and you can do so much in all different kinds of areas. And the interesting thing is, the more people I get to know, the more I realize how connected we all are. And things could sometimes be so much easier if others would see it the same way and act accordingly. I mean, we're all consumers. So by protecting our food, we're protecting our families, our friends. And that is so important. And it's not others, it's not them, it's us. It's us all the way. And that's what's really, what keeps me going. And so I'm, I do presentations, and I write articles, and I try to spread the word. I'm about to set up a recall ready community, a global recall ready community, as I said before, because it is global. It's a global issue, and working on a global standard for managing and communicating recall information. And that is just my heartfelt topic, and that's what I do and what I love doing.
The passion. I feel the passion.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I love how you talk about, standardizing how we talk about recalls, because I'd love to know more about what you've seen, because there's some standard templates on what it looks like, but not everybody follows those. And I mean, to be honest, right? Like when I see one come out from FDA or USDA, really, those give no information.
Yeah.
Or they tell us little. They give us really top line basics.
Yeah.
But if we want to know more information, like what does that look like? And do people give that out?
But like it's happening right now with the FDA. They are working on modernizing the recall process. And so that's a great step, in my opinion. And of course, it needs a lot of input from the industry to come up with a final plan that applies to all of us in the end. And so we're in contact with the FDA, and there was just this hearing a couple of weeks ago where everyone was invited to do a little presentation or do a little speech, and our CEO was there as well, and he talked about modernizing the recall process, and also, of course, as I did before, talking about recall ready communities, and that is, in our opinion, that is so important, because you cannot look at doing a recall and getting products out of the shelves just for your own company. You have a supply chain, and often it's a global supply chain, and you need to think big. You need to think in order of community, because there is not one recall that only affects one company. There are a lot of companies affected by recalls. And so sharing data, doing all of that in a standardized way, that is so helpful and makes it so much easier. People need to receive the information they need to see in order to act accordingly. And
Yeah.
so if we would all be acting in the same standardized way, wow, it would go so much faster and products could be removed so much easier. And
Wow.
also, there would be less food waste because you would not have to throw out everything with the name of, let's say, chocolate chip cookie. No, you could be specific. You would know the lot code. You would know exactly when it was shipped, who received it. You even have pictures of it. So it's easy to only take out those products that are contaminated.
Mm.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like, as you talk about this recall ready community, you talk about it being connected globally, right? Because, like you're saying, a recall doesn't just impact one company, it
Mhm.
impacts multiple companies, several companies sometimes. And then you talked about sharing data and standardizing how that process happens. If this may be the first time that people are hearing about this recall ready community, how
Yeah.
do they get involved with it? Like, what do they get out of it? What should they bring to this
Mm.
community?
Well, it depends, of course, where you are on the supply chain, which, kind of which role you play. But in the end, it's beneficial for everyone. Like if you're a manufacturer, your communication with your retailers, with your customers are so much easier because, you have a standardized way, you know how to communicate data. And yeah, well, I need to get this organized in my brain a little bit better because I think we have to go one step back, coming back to the recall simulation, because that's actually where it all starts,
Mm.
specifically for manufacturers. Because doing a recall simulation, it's not as much a crisis as it already is stressful because lives can be at stake. It can be your responsibility to save people's lives. But if you're trained, if you did a recall simulation, if you know what to do, how to communicate, and in this digital world, where to put your data and how to communicate fast and proper, that makes it so much easier. And of course, as I said, there is stress, and I don't want to take that away.
Mhm.
But we know that from our own lives. When we're prepared for a certain situation, yes, we feel stress, but we're not stressed out and we're not in crisis mode. So
Mhm.
that's a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, like not being in
yeah,
crisis mode. That I feel like that's like
yeah,
screaming out to me because a lot of times people think, okay, if you're in recall, you're in crisis. But if you've prepared, then like you said, it's like of course it's a stressful situation. You probably have to move things off your calendar, right? To dedicate this
right,
time for the
yeah,
recall. But there's a difference between that stress versus being stressed out and completely burnt out and in this crisis mode that you don't know what to do because you
right.
haven't actually prepared for this piece.
And you make mistakes. When you're in crisis mode, of course you make mistakes, and that is all
Mhm.
human and natural to make mistakes when your mind is in that state of mind. You're
Yeah.
unsettled, you don't know what to do, and mistakes happen. And so, yeah, being prepared is of utmost importance. And then, yeah, that's for the manufacturers, of course, and that's where it all starts. And then you need to inform your customers, and they can be spread out all across the continent, the country, the globe. So that's you know yeah, that's usually the situation. And so you need to make sure everyone gets the same information as fast as possible.
Mhm.
And I mean, there used to be phone calls, emails, even companies would even send out letters. I mean, imagine it's so important and you need to act fast and people send out a letter. But okay. Anyways, that has changed now.
Mhm.
Uh, Still, there is room for improvement, of course, but doing it in a standardized and digital way, you're fast. You're really fast. I mean, it goes in no time. You send out emails now, you get the response, you get to see who responded back.
Mhm.
You can manage your recall through this one tool that you're using, and that makes it easier. You can cover your whole supply chain from the manufacturer to the retailer, all the way down to the consumer, and of course, all
Wow.
the point of sales of the retailer in between, yeah, that goes without saying. So everyone along the supply chain gets the information at the same time and can act really fast and protect consumers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Stephanie, so if I, if I was still in manufacturing, I'd probably listen and go, "Oh, that's why I do mock recalls." Like all the things you're talking about, right? To make sure that I have standard communication. I have templates for my communication people to fill in, or for my sales people to give, or that go in an email, or even, dare I say, I have to call people. Like it's a template for people to use.
Mhm.
We have a process. We've done our recalls. They seem to be aligned with industry standards. So, like, where would I improve? And the other thing I'm curious about is I've noticed that you've said the word simulation a few times. Like, how is that different than the mock recalls that I've been doing?
Well, it's, as I said before, it's the whole thing. It's not just gathering data, but it's also, you know, acting as if you were dealing with a real life event of a recall. And that's the huge difference. So you go all the way. You inform fake customers of yours, or you can, of course, invite your real customers or part of them so that they see, well, my customers is training, and I know what to expect if there's a recall. So you can do it either way. Some of our clients only include their quality team, others invite parts or all of their customers. That's, that is for them to decide.
Mhm.
It makes sense either way. um, and so then sending that out, and being able to manage the recall in a tool like ours, or just getting all the information back from the responders and knowing, okay, now what am I supposed to do with that? I mean,
Yeah.
you get all this data and then you go like, well, that's nice. Now what?
Right.
And that is also an important part for the recall starter to know, how to move on. And we talked about audits before. That is also very important because our system automatically generates reports. And you can use those reports for audit compliance, of course. You can have your auditor come into the company, and if that person goes like, so when did you do your last, and I'm just continue calling it recall simulation. um, then you can say, well, let me log in and I'll either email you my report or I'll print it for you. It's a one page document. And, it's like in no time. You don't have to go through your physical files and look for a document that might have been printed or not, and might have been put in the right file or not. And so it's
Yeah.
really easy to get all that information real fast. So that's for your benefit as well if you have an audit coming your way, or for reimbursement claims, like for insurance companies. Or
Yeah.
if you're a retailer, you can, of course, go back to your manufacturer and say, okay, now this and that product needed to be recalled on this and that day, and I want to get my money back from you because it was your fault. I mean, it's, yeah, you know what I mean.
Your
um,
area of responsibility.
yeah, that's better. Thank you. Sounds way better. I'm sorry.
Yes. Well, and I think that distinction though is really important because a lot of people would probably be like, well, we already have something that tracks our inventory and supply and even productions, right? That's our traceability system. But Recall InfoLink is a separate system that's not a traceability tool. It
Yeah.
is really intended to be, and tell me if I'm on the right track here, right? Like for consistent and quick communication to all of your customers, those end users, but also then really tracking, like, did people receive things? Did they open things? Have they responded back? Like, really that part of like, how do we verify our recall actions were effective?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's all part of our system. And of course, you can use it for, because you have all the important numbers that are related to the product. As I said before, like the lot code, the UPC number, specific store numbers that are given to a specific product. So you have all of that as part of a recall, and all of part of the product information that is put into the system. So it's quite easy to detect the product that is contaminated and needs to be taken out of the shelves. So there you have a good way of tracing that specific product down and removing it.
Yeah. I like the way you call it recall simulations too, because one of the things, I feel like early on in my career, just being in a plant, like we focus in a large company, right? We focused on our part, right? Like if there's a recall and we need to have, collect information, our part was to, figure out like how much was made, where did it go, where did it ship? We could see all that information. But this whole piece of, okay, what is the communication out? Even like the pieces of like, when does PR step in and do they know what to do? And, who is going to be the one that's going to actually contact the customers? Do they know what to do? And it's like those different parts of the recall that's there that I think sometimes when people think about mock traces, like they don't hit any of those steps. And so when we talked about earlier on, if we're not prepared, right, like that's going to feel like a crisis if the people that's outside of the manufacturing facility, if they don't know what to do next because they've never been a part of a trace, right? They've never been a part of a recall simulation. And then it's like, oh no, like, what do I do? What do I do? Sure, I have this written documentation that I haven't read for like 3 years, like what do I do? And so making sure that all of those pieces are included, so people will at least know, okay, I've practiced this before. Okay, now we're just going through this process, having those conversations. And I feel like that's something I didn't really think about early on in my career. Until later on when I had that responsibility of contacting each of those people, where it's like, oh, there's so much more. There's so much more to it that, if you're just looking at your part, that you miss.
Exactly. And when you're in a live recall, there is no time to start reading a book or, you cannot go and say, well, let's stop right here because I don't have the backup information and I need to figure out what to do. I mean, well, if you don't know what to do, what else would you do? I mean, right? You reach out for help. And I have a funny story to tell you. And that's what happened to our CEO. Very early on in when he started the company, it was Christmas. And he got a phone call from one of our clients, and the lady said, well, we're all allowed to go home early today because it's Christmas. My boss is not here, and now we have this huge recall and I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. And he said, calm down, I'll walk you through. And so he helped her log in, and she did that, and he helped her get all the information together. And then after a couple of minutes, he said, well, and now press start. And she said, okay, did that. And then he said, well, you can go home now. And she was, what? Are you serious? So he was able to help her through the whole recall process. And a little amount of time. And she was, she was free to go to her family, celebrate Christmas, and she could manage the rest or view the rest of the recall from home, using your phone. You can just, log in from your phone, and then you can see the progress, and you can, you get the information, who responded, who didn't, who acknowledged, and who didn't. And so that's such a huge relief for people working in the industry. And it's such a great feeling to be able to help our clients, as I said before, with such a little effort. Being on the phone and walking someone through the system it doesn't cost much, not even a lot of time. It's very, self-explaining and easy. And the outcome, we don't know, but often with recalls, if you act fast, you can save lives. I don't know exactly which product was recalled in that case, but it's probably saved lives. And that's what we're all here for, right? Protecting consumers.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think, like you said, it's bigger than just like, wow, it was easy to use when you're really prepared and have a system.
Yeah.
But it's about limiting consumer exposure. It's
Hmm.
about limiting risk to your organization because people aren't notified, or they aren't able to go actually pull product or whatever is needed. So it's not just that it helps the people who are running things and responsible for it make life easier. Granted, that's a huge benefit, but really it's about that organizational risk.
Yeah.
And so that leads me to the question of, I mean, right, everybody knows you need a recall plan. You need to practice your recalls. So what prevents companies from really being recall ready?
Well, that's a great question, Jill.
Because I
Uh,
mean, 'cause we still have lots of people who have recalls, and it's like the five alarm bells are going off
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it's a
yeah,
crisis and people are running around. So why
absolutely.
why does
So
it happen?
what we've learned over the years, it's not really the topic people want to talk about or even think about.
Mm.
So when you just came out of a recall, you're like, "Phew, I'm so happy it's over. I don't want to talk about it for the next couple of months." So that's not a good time to talk about recalls or recall simulations. When the recall is passed for a longer time, they I don't know, it kind of goes in some part of their brains where they just don't remember, and recalls, nah, we don't do recalls. I don't need anything, and I don't even need to think about it because it's been such a long time. Yeah, yeah, it won't happen again. So
Yeah.
it's never number one on their list. It should be,
Yeah.
especially when you are a leader in that field.
Right.
Um, but it's not, unfortunately. So then, the need for help is huge when there actually is a live recall and people have not practiced and they don't have a tool in place that covers all of their supply chain. I mean,
Yeah.
that is a lot of companies do have some sort of solution that is an in-house solution that their IT team has built by itself. And I'm not here to say in-house solutions are bad or not good enough. Of course they are, but they only cover one company. They only cover, and maybe they go back to one manufacturer or to their manufacturer and then to their point of sales. But that's usually not where it starts. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It spreads more further than just to this one company and the direct customers that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
So it
It's
makes
that community.
right, yes. That brings us back to that again. It
Hmm.
makes a lot of sense to start thinking and talking about recall ready communities and acting upon that, because we're all connected in this. And
Yeah.
it is a community approach to dealing with recalls would even save more lives
Yeah.
and would even protect more brands.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's what we're all hoping for in the end. Is
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. You brought up such a great point of like, people don't want to talk about them. It's one of those things that maybe people are avoiding because it's almost like, let's not say it because then we'll have to knock on wood or we'll have, cross our fingers or whatever superstition we can come up with, because if we voice it, it might happen. But this
right.
is one of those things that we do need to talk about, and we should be talking about it often so
Yeah.
that we are ready, right? Recall ready, just in case it happens.
And it will happen. It happens to everyone. It's just a matter of when.
Mm-hmm.
So you might want to do your fire drill to be prepared and not just sit there and hope for the best
Yeah.
and wait for what
Mhm.
to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've talked about, the benefits of that. Number one, of course, being the consumers, right? Being able to pull product quickly for the consumers. And it's also good for business, right? It's good for business to be able to pinpoint, track, and recall products as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
from a external standpoint, but even an internal standpoint, and
Mhm.
what our people have to do every day. The example you gave in the story you told of that person that's here on Christmas trying to manage a recall, like how much was it for that person to be like, whew, I can enjoy time with my family and not have to spend 2-3 days here trying to manage this by myself because I had the right tools in place.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
True. Well, and that kind of circles back then to leadership and culture,
Mhm.
Yes.
right? Because one of the arguments I imagine that I've heard and maybe others have, and I'd love to know the ones other people have, but like our companies, like, right, we're still making food, products still going out the door every day, whether or not I have an improved system or not. Like I have one and it works, even if it's maybe not as savvy as I would like it to be. And so, how does leadership and management and culture all kind of fit into like how proactive and actually more how preventive we are when it comes to some of these systems that we have?
Yeah. That's again a good question. You're full of them today, Jill. It's
Knock
just,
them out.
you know
Well,
what? I
but
really,
that's like that's the age old question we all come up with, right? Like
absolutely.
how do we help create change when we know like we'll increase, we'll adopting a new system that makes life easier. Like it always comes back to ROI, bottom line, KPIs, making that connection. I think is where I've always heard people go, that's the struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And that's actually part of my struggle as well. I talked to a huge retailer here in Germany, and the lady said to me, you know what? We have a system in place, and that covers about 80% of what your system does. So we're good. I mean, people know how to handle our system, and I don't want to change. I would
Mhm.
change the running system, So why would I? It works fine so far. We haven't had any bigger issues, so we're good with that. But
Mm,
that is just yeah, it's
the struggle.
The
yeah, it's
struggle.
it's also a very limited view to the whole situation on her part.
Yeah.
Yes, I know people are often afraid of change, but if you do it in a smooth way, if you're there to help people to do the change, and if you can show them the benefits, the clear benefits that they would be experiencing once they changed, it's just actually it's a no-brainer.
Mhm. Mhm.
Comparing the benefits to the current situation, of course you need to train a staff, and that also comes back to food safety culture, because you need to train them in a way that they need to understand how to use a system, so you need to pair the training to their capability of understanding, and I mean that in the most positive way. I mean, like I'm this is not my mother tongue, so I would need probably a different training that someone from the US who would be trained on the same tool. So I mean, this is just what we're facing these days, and yeah, it's just so very important, the training part,
Yeah.
and but then also the creating a safe environment where people who are trained are allowed or feel safe to speak up and say, well, here's something wrong, and I think we need to stop the conveyor belt, and I think we need to do a recall because I just found foreign material in that
Yeah.
whatever food it is. So um, yeah, all of that comes together as well in this situation.
Yeah. I almost think one thing that came to my mind as you were talking specifically about culture in the example that you gave of like, we're 80% there, so we're fine. It's one of those things that for organizations to get there of like, we have to be in this mode of continuous improvement.
Mhm.
And so, when you were at 50%, being able to get to 80%, that's improvement, right? How
Yeah.
are you going to get to 100%? What in versus saying, oh, well, we're good enough right now, or we have this risk out there, but we're not doing anything with it because we know that it's going to bite you at some point.
Mm.
So it's almost like the, the cultures that are really improving, right? They really buy into this concept of continuous improvement and how are we going to improve over time? Like, even if we talk about the GFSI maturity model around food safety culture, the last kind of stage is in this continuous improvement bucket because, we talk about it all the time. Food safety culture is not a destination, it's a journey. And it never really ends because our consumers change, we're constantly innovating, we're constantly, trying to be more efficient and changing our processes. And so to be able to switch your organization to really think about how do we improve year over year, that's when you start getting the ideas and really the mindset change that 80% is not good enough for us. It might be good today because we were at 50% 3 years ago, but we really need to start thinking about how do we bump that 80% up to 85 to 90 to 95.
Yeah.
And I think, and we get the practical side, right? If we're thinking about improvement, we probably have, every company has space for improvement in things like sanitation and recall. So, right, when I think about like, where am I going to spend time? I think the things that we do on a daily basis, like sanitation, hopefully get some attention, but it doesn't mean that this over here isn't important.
Yeah.
And I wonder about, and Tia, you and I've talked about this many, many times, like, are we using the wrong KPIs? Or like, which KPIs need to be adjusted, changed, added, shifted? Because one of the things that we hear over time with clients, even as they're trying to move food safety culture, is, well, gosh, what KPI do I use to measure it?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we're focused on the wrong thing. Like, our engagement scores, like, those are going to take like being blown up to have them shift because we have so much data. It's like the aircraft carrier trying to turn sharp. It's often not going to happen unless something tragic happens or remarkable happens.
Right.
And so, but we have to think about what are the practical things that are really important on the journey to get there.
Yeah.
So we talk about food safety culture for, things we often talk about are like, are we developing people with human skills? Like, what is the KPI around that?
Yeah.
Not development. It's not another advanced HACCP class or another recall class.
Yeah.
But even with this, I think about the KPIs, like how many of our systems, I'm thinking off the cuff here, right? It could almost be like a process capability. Like how many of them are meeting our expectations?
Yeah.
So that could be a standard KPI. Like recall is not at 1 for a CPK. So are we okay with that, or does it need to be improved?
Right. Yeah.
But somehow looking at perhaps the robustness of systems, like that gets lost sometimes in our KPIs because there's some of them are aligned well, but some of them don't align well with some of the probably more popular or the ones that seem to be used more out there in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. Such good point.
That's my soapbox.
Yeah. I mean, well, yeah. This is us, right? Because like people try to use the same KPIs, right, that we've been using and not really seeing any movement. And I think what we talk about at Catalyst, and I think what people are picking up on is that we have to measure things that are important to our culture, right? Yeah. And it needs to be things that's going to move that dial. And you know what? It might be your audit score. It's probably not your audit score. It's probably not. Yeah, it's probably exactly things like how effective is our recall, program, right? What gaps do we have? And, Jill, as you were talking, it just, to me, it just screams like strategy, right? Like, what is your overall strategy around culture? And that's not everything, right? Like, you can't do everything in a year, right? It's over time. How are you improving recall over time? How are you improving sanitation? How are you and how is that built into your overall strategy over the years? And I think sometimes we struggle with that because we don't take the time, number one, to do long-term strategy planning. But then, Jill, to your point, like we miss out because we're trying to do these standard KPIs that really aren't measuring culture, or really aren't measuring our leadership, or really aren't measuring the key programs that are important to our organization or to our facility, which is could be very specific.
And hopefully it should be, because what we're working on in one facility or one organization should be different, or likely is different than what we're doing in other ones.
Yeah.
So really thinking about, how do you get meaningful KPIs? We talk with people all the time about what is the change you actually want to see?
Yeah.
What is it that is going to get you there? That is what you have to be focused on.
That's so true. Yeah. But in general, I think changing culture, improving culture, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's a long journey, and you really need to stick with it and just not give up. Although there might be, throwbacks here and there, but you just need to be patient and kind of follow your path. And as to your point, Jill, with the technical equipment and everything, or strategy, Tia, as you said, I think it needs to become, and I'm hoping I'm finding the right word here, it needs to become your employees' value. It's not the things, the like the technical equipment. They need to understand why, and it not only understand but make it their own value within the company, and follow that value and live up to it. And it has to become like a very automated behavior.
Yeah.
That how they respond to certain things. And once that's achieved, we're a huge step further along the way to changing culture or establishing food safety culture in a company.
Yeah, we talk about it in a way of connecting people's values to what we're doing, right? So understanding, like, why does it matter to you? Like, why is it important to you that we are recall ready, right? Why is it important to you that we're able to recall our product back if something's wrong with it? Could be because you eat the product, or your kids eat it, or you want a job, or whatever that value is. As leaders, it's important for us to be able to tie that for them, right? To tie their values to what we're doing. And that's hard to do, because you have to do it for everyone.
Well, but even the example that you just used, I think, to me, that's a great opportunity for an organization to actually recognize what values their team members have.
Yeah.
So it's not just, yes, I believe in being recall ready, but as a human, I value spending time with my family over the holidays. And so as an organization, if I have an organization who's committed to investing in systems that help me live my values, that's a win, compared to the one who's like, that's fine, you'll have to show up anyways because that's your role and it's your responsibility. Ouch.
Yeah.
There's way too many companies out there who that's kind of the stance they take, and they don't intend it to be that way, but that's how it plays out.
Right. Yeah.
Because there is this urgency to it, and because there aren't always the systems in place for that. And I think that's a good example of where organizations are it's great to understand what a company stands for and where we're going. But as an organization and the leaders, if we don't understand what our people value, that's where we get all of that frustration when we're like, well, gosh, I gave them extra time off for the holidays. Yeah, well, I still had to come in and run a recall.
Right.
And so what we didn't do was we didn't understand the value of like spending time away from work, whether that's with a family, by yourself, whatever that is important to people.
I got another interesting conversation to share with you. I talked to a gentleman just the other day, and he said, so, what is your opinion? I'm planning on giving my staff the newest technology in cleaning a meat cutter. What do you say? are they not going to really like that? And will they now understand and do their job with all their heart and all their enthusiasm? And I said, well, they might for the first week because it's a new tool. It's shiny, it's new, but then they won't again because they kind of fall back to their old behavior. They don't see the value in that specific machine. And he was, but it's new, it's brand new, it makes their lives easier. And I said, well, yes, and that's wonderful. But as long as they don't really understand why they are supposed to clean that specific meat cutter, they won't do it. And so if you go ahead and tell them, if you buy, or if you or your wife or whoever or your husband buys that meat for your family and it is contaminated, they'll get sick. They might even die. So by cleaning that meat cutter, in a way, you protect your family, you protect your friends, and you protect yourself.
Yeah.
That gives it a completely different level of engagement, and then it can become the value of that person who is supposed to clean the meat cutter.
Yeah.
But that needs to be understood, and that is sometimes a little bit difficult.
It's hard to do. It's one of the hardest steps of culture, right? Is understanding what people value.
Exactly.
You know,
It is.
oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying that all comes back to mindset as well.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm not going to change my behavior. I'm not going to look at KPIs different if my mindset is still where I'm at today.
Yeah.
And you need to open up your mind and see the bigger picture. And that comes back to the Recall Ready community, understanding it does not only affect your own specific company, but it affects
That's around awareness. Do I have awareness around really how things are being impacted? Do I have awareness of how I'm contributing to the situation? Do I have awareness of really what I'm expecting from my team members versus what I'm telling them?
Yeah.
There's so much pulled into that whole mindset and understanding awareness that play into all the parts that we do. And that's really the crux of culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure
Stephanie, I wanted to talk a little bit about the activity that's happening with the FDA around recalls and traceability, because that can be top of mind for many of the people that tune in to Real Talk. And one big thing, we brought it up earlier, is the modernization of recalls.
Yeah.
And you all have been a part of that conversation as Recall Info Link. It's early on, right? They're getting information, they're connecting with the industry and supporters of the industry from a services standpoint. Would you say that Recall Info Link was almost ahead of its time when you sort of think about modernization of recalls?
To be honest, maybe a little bit. Yeah. And I mean, I can say that for sure when it comes to Germany, because with all the having data in the cloud, being digital, that was really a challenge here for me to talk to companies. I mean, we're talking about very sensitive data. Companies are very hesitant to share that, or I mean, not actively share, but being afraid of getting hacked. And so they are just holding back, or they were holding back, and they didn't really want to talk about that. They didn't want to hear about that, and that's why I started. I don't have a live talk, but I do interviews, and that's the reason why I started them, to educate people and to help them understand how important it is to share or put the data in a secure system, and having all in a standardized way, using those benefits. So in that specific regards, I would say yes, Recall Infolink, as it looks like it's been ahead of its time. I mean, I think it's really great though, from the FDA side, to open up, to listen to the industry, to invite people. to a hearing and, record that and get all the input that they're getting from the industry relevant people, all the experts of the industry. I mean, we're all experts in a certain field and no one can be expert in everything. So, gathering all of that, all of those expertise and listen to that and be open to learn, I think that takes a lot.
Yeah.
And it shows engagement and it shows care. And so doing that, I think it's a great step forward in the right direction.
Yeah.
And so, we're hoping to for the FDA to get the input they're looking for and to come up with a solution that's best for all of us.
Yeah.
All of us.
And that's great that you all are ahead of that curve, because that means you're ready, right? You're ready for what's coming. You were just kind of waiting for the government to catch up. The work that you all were doing.
Those are your words, Tia.
It's I think, like you said, it's the consistency and everybody raising the bar for where they're at.
Yeah.
So it's having systems that are there. It's having regulatory that's at that same spot to be able to support that.
It's all together so neatly. Yeah.
And organizations and leaders that are, prioritizing and committing to seeing there's value, not just from a an organizational risk standpoint, but for making life better for the people who work for us and with us. Because if people don't love working there, we know they walk out the door. So then our consumers don't have the people in our roles to be able to do what they need to do to help protect them.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's so very true.
And then, Stephanie, there's one more question I want to ask that people might be thinking about, and that's around traceability, because, FSMA 204, the compliance date is in January 2026. And so traceability is top of mind for organizations that must comply with FSMA. And so I wanted to ask you, we've been talking about recall. We've mentioned traceability, of course, right? Can you talk a little bit about how does traceability and recalls, how do those programs and those actions complement one another?
They are two separate things, of course, but they need to be combined to come up with the best solution possible. You need to know where the product is coming from in order or where it was sent in order to get it back from there. So getting all the necessary data and have that all in one system, of course, helps a ton with that. Makes it easier figuring out, like the ingredients, for example. Where did I get the ingredients from? Those things are very important. And not sure I told you that, but we have this. I'm not going to give you the German name because it's it's ridiculous. But we have this new law in Germany which started January of this year, and bigger companies already need to apply or need to comply. Sorry, and you need to know exactly, like from the seed to from the farm where it was planted and who harvested it, and all the social aspects. Was child labor a part of that, for example? All of those things, and this is making it so huge because you need to really know exactly where your ingredients is coming from, where the product is coming from, who was dealing with it, who had it in his hands or her hands. And this is really going down into all the details. And so traceability, yes, it's an important thing. A tool like ours helps with that because you have all the information, all the data. So yeah, and I think that's where it all comes together in the end. Of course, two separate things, but they are linked, and then it's best if you have something that can link them using modern data and modern tools.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I know that you tackling those questions is something that our audience is interested in because they're right in the middle of it.
Yeah. And if they have any further questions, I mean, you can see my email addressed right there. I'm
Perfect.
happy to answer questions as a follow up. If time's almost. Oh yeah, time's almost up.
I know we could have got, like you said, we could have done the 2 hour show, but
At
we do
least,
just have like another minute left. So I'm glad that you brought up this is how people can get a hold of you. Your
yeah.
email,
Anytime. I'm
through
happy.
LinkedIn.
Yeah. That's where I'm active as well. So whoever has a question, please reach out to me. I'm happy to give you answers.
Well, Stephanie, we are so glad that you were able to join us today and talk about recalls and
Yeah.
leadership and culture and all these things that we know are top of mind for people that we talk with and our clients. And
Yeah.
as they are looking at how to solve these challenges and how to move the bar, these are the type of conversations that seed them to go, here's another thing to consider. So thank you for being part of that in our community to help people as they are moving forward on their journey as well.
Yes.
Well,
Thank
thank
you
you
for being
so
here.
much. Yeah, it's been as always a huge pleasure talking to you, and a lot of fun too.
Of
And
course.
yeah, I'm really happy that we had the time to discuss all those topics that are truly important.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, thank you for being a part of that conversation. And thank you to our audience for being here, for being a part of the conversation. If you're listening on replay, add a comment and say hashtag replay so we know that you're here, because we love hearing your perspectives, your questions. So don't hesitate to reach out and connect with Stephanie.
Absolutely. And of course, we'll be back here same time, same place next week. So we look forward to seeing you then. And until then, make it a great week.
Yes, and don't miss out on the show.
Exactly. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Week.